when I was little, I was treated here for a dislocated hip here in Northampton. Now I am fine, here with my friends, Messiah and Ewan. We would like to share with you this story, how children just like me were treated for here in Northampton more than 100 years ago. Ewan and Messiah will explain.
There is a vast amount of material on disability and its place in society. However, there is little about children with physical difficulties from more than 100 years ago.
The Northampton's Children Crippled Fund.
Can we say crippled in this film?
Yes, we can. It was used by the Victorians to describe people who suffered from impaired physical mobility from whatever means.
Its meaning has evolved since then. Now, cripple is used to reflect a commitment for full rights.
The Northampton Crippled Childrens Fund, the NCCF, from 1893 until 1925. It funded medical care for the relief and comfort of crippled children in straitened circumstances, living in the town of Northampton and under 17 years of age. The unique NCCF material lies in the archive of the Northampton General Hospital. This contains the original medical records, annual reports, minute books, and 6 ledgers of case records from 1898 to 1919. This short film uses the NCCF patient ledgers, annual reports, financial reports, newspaper cuttings, plus contemporary Ministry of Health annuals for the year 1908, more than 100 years ago.
The records are really detailed. All taken together, they give the full care pathway.
We can take an individual child, know their medical history and dates.
They tell us what treatments were given, the outcome, and when they went on holiday to the seaside.
It was about giving children the chance to live a full life.
Long after this gentleman was discharged, there was clearly some sort of contact.
What's really enchanting is that some records also show some hand-drawn illustrations. Some of them are very beautiful. One other thing that is definitely not done today is that these reports name each child with the cost of any benefits they have received from the NCCF.
This was not long ago. It can't be nice knowing how much charity you received.
So, what was Northampton like more than 100 years ago?
In 1908, Northampton was a light industrial town. Typically, general health was much poorer than today. There was considerable poverty and only the beginnings of a welfare state. Infectious diseases were very common, with 9 deaths due to measles the previous year. In 1908, Northampton's infant mortality was 96 children out of every 1,000, which was quite good for the time. Today's figure is around 4. The children came from the poorest areas of Northampton.
How it started in 1893 was really interesting.
The NCCF grew from that, and the Crippled Children's Tea became an annual event. However, from the very start, they all recognised that buying teas for crippled children was not going to provide long-term help. So the NCCF was set up. Children were seen in the outpatient department and also visited in their homes. Interestingly, the support for the NCCF was strong and wide. It was kept going by individual subscribers as well as working men's clubs and later legacies.
So, what did the NCCF do?
We don't have time to go through everything, so we selected one of the record books at random and looked at 20 consecutive cases.
There were an equal number of boys and girls, and aged between 2 to 13 years. Almost half of the cases were rickets, and 30% were tuberculosis. Both of these conditions are now very uncommon in the developed world. The remainder were not due to infection or poor nutrition.
So, what does a social historian have to say?
History is complicated and messy. Some social historians claim that the charities like the NCCF were part of a system, a moral condemnation of the poor. But is that really true?
Okay, hello, I'm Rajan Natarajan, one of the orthopaedics consultants at Northampton General Hospital. I've been asked to see 3 children who have been made up with conditions that we used to see 100 years ago: TB, rickets and osteomyelitis, which we fortunately don't see these days. Let's kick off with Alexander. Alexander here has got osteomyelitis, which is bone infection, and that's causing discharge of pus here. Osteomyelitis is fortunately not seen very often these days, but we used to see a lot of them in those days. We treat them today with antibiotics, which we didn't have 100 years ago, so treatment today is definitive. Children get better all the time and back to normal life. This is Alethea. She's got tuberculosis of the knee, a condition we almost seldom see in the United Kingdom these days, much commoner 100 years ago, and it was associated with deprivation and poverty. Treatment was largely to offer these children nourishing food, cod liver oil, exposure to open spaces, exposure to sunlight, and so on and so forth. We did not have antibiotics in those days. Treatment today is revolutionized by availability of antibiotics. We don't see them because of improvement in socioeconomic indicators within the United Kingdom, and we have literally eradicated this condition today. Now we have Riley here, who has a condition called rickets. Again, we rarely see this condition today, but it was incredibly common 100 years ago, associated with social deprivation and poverty. It caused deformities, it caused stunted growth, and led to lifelong disabilities in these children. But there was knowledge that giving these children cod liver oil, exposing them to sunlight, for instance, made a huge difference. So those treatments were offered to these children and did make a difference. But the sheer incidence of these conditions were so common in those days that permanent disability for these children was virtually a given. Fortunately, we live in a different era where these conditions are completely eradicated.
100 years ago, this UK textbook says there was no treatment that could be said to be of any avail.
Turpentine and mercury were used, but were both ineffective and quite possibly harmful.
There was a strong emphasis on diet, although vitamins had yet to be discovered. For rickets, no drugs are so successful as cod liver oil. William Osler, a very famous doctor of that time, recommended 1/2 to 1 teaspoon is very advantageous. He also emphasised that the better the health of the mother during the pregnancy, the less likelihood there is development of rickets in the child. Tracing paper repeated monthly would be used to check the rate of the change of deformity.
Bracing would be given if the deformities were already severe or if the deformity increased in spite of conventional treatment.
100 years ago, the importance of adequate nutrition to ensure healthy growing bodies was already well known, but was not completely understood. One of the aims of the NCCF was to provide long-term nutritional support for these children. These children were chronically undernourished. The NCCF provided free milk, porridge and cod liver oil. It's easy to believe that in the era before antibiotics, there were little effective medical treatments beyond diet, sanitation and a healthy environment. But is this true? Mrs. Sue Thornton, a dietitian, explains.
Cod liver oil, milk and a seaside holiday lasting several weeks would have had a direct therapeutic effect, not only on the treatment of vitamin D deficiency causing rickets, but also on tuberculosis. The only two vitamins in cod liver oil are vitamin A and vitamin D, both of which have many times the recommended daily requirement. 1 pint of whole milk provides 28% of the recommended daily requirement. The seaside holiday would increase vitamin D levels through the effect of sunshine on the body. Furthermore, a lack of vitamin D increases susceptibility to tuberculosis and can contribute to clinical deterioration of the disease. Thus, it is indeed possible that the cod liver oil, milk and seaside trip had a direct therapeutic benefit.
I asked some of my friends to try out the diet with me to find out.
I can't eat anymore.
I told you you're being greedy, Aaron.
It'll make you big and strong.
Don't waste it, I'll have it.
I can't eat it every day.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all.
Children must eat healthy food every day.
I particularly noticed their white, pinched and town faces upon arrival. But within a few days, what a change! Their faces were sunburnt and ruddy, eyes bright, hearts light and bodies full of activity.
This was what was available in 1908. A spinal carriage was ordered and we shared out 3 hours per week per child.
There was clearly a lot more going on than diets and holidays.
So how can we put this all together?
Much of the pre-welfare state history of disability tells of threadbare support offered to those with physical and mental impairments. But they were pushed by the communities to the social margins. But the NCCF archive suggests a different view for children with physical impairments. There were payments in kind, medical care, an annual seaside holiday. The poor with physical impairments could fare remarkably well.
We can find no evidence of moral condemnation of the poor in Northampton, and to view its work to the poor of Northampton through these terms is insufficiently nuanced. The NCCF continued to grow over its 33 years of existence. In its final year, nearly 3,000 children were receiving regular supervision and treatment. It's no coincidence that in 1905, 34 out of the 44 members of the committee were female. Before women had the vote, and with extremely limited opportunities for higher education, the NCCF allowed middle-class women an outlet. They could use their time and maybe their resources to help women whose means were far more limited. This film demonstrates that the NCCF and society at the time had a sophisticated sense of physical impairment and supported children with physical disabilities with the best available treatments of that time. In 1925, the NCCF finally had enough money to set up a permanent treatment centre with the opening of the Manfield Orthopaedic Hospital. Miss Phipps Robinson, one of the original founders of the NCCF, devoted her life to ensure the NCCF's success.
I'm sure she will be delighted that the care continues, but today it's the Northampton General Hospital.
According to the World Health Organization, today 1 billion people, that's 15% of the world's population, lives with some form of disability. The care given to children with disabilities 100 years ago and today in Northampton is part of a much wider question.
That question is no longer if but how children with disabilities were included in global health efforts.
Hello, Reagan.
Got to go.